Welcome in, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. This time, we're heading to Camp Emerson. Picture this. Rustic cabins, campfires, the whole summer camp thing, but with a much darker twist.
Yeah, this one's less about singing Kumbaya and more about uncovering what happens when a place designed for carefree summers becomes the backdrop for, well, two disappearances, decades apart.
Exactly. And the sources on this one, downright chilling. We're talking first-hand accounts, police reports, even some local lore that's, let's just say, unsettling.
What gets me is how quickly that image of the perfect summer camp falls apart. You start digging and it's like peeling back layers of a very messed up onion.
Ugh, okay, not the onion metaphor. But I get you. It's that unsettling feeling that something's not right.
Yeah.
And nowhere is that more apparent than with the Van Laar family. They practically own the place, right?
More than that, they are the place. You can't separate Camp Emerson from the Van Laars. Their history, their secrets, it's all intertwined. And that's where we need to start, with understanding that dynamic.
Okay, so the Van Laars, they're like the first family of Camp Emerson, except not in a wholesome Kennedy-esque kind of way, more like secrets and disappearances kind of way. Right?
Exactly. And that brings us to our first disappearance in 1961. Young boy, Bear Van Laar, vanishes from the campgrounds. Poof. Gone.
Just like that. And here's the thing that gets me. Even looking at the sources from back then, the family's reaction, or lack thereof, is just strange.
It's like their instinct is to control the narrative from the get-go. Right. Present this united front that, honestly, feels more like a cover-up than actual grief.
Which, newsflash, never really works. So we fast forward. Summer of '75. Camp Emerson. A new generation of Van Laars, including Bear's niece, Barbara. And guess what?
Let me guess, she disappears too.
Bingo. Talk about a family tradition you don't want to be a part of.
And this is where this deep dive takes a turn. Because with Barbara, it's not just about finding a missing girl. It's like the past is rearing its head, forcing everyone to deal with what happened to Bear all those years ago.
Right, like the two disappearances become interconnected. And just to make things more complicated, let's introduce some of the other players. We've got Louise, a young counselor at the camp, who gets caught up in this whole mess.
And she's got this connection to the Van Laars through John Paul McClellan, which complicates things even further.
Yeah, John Paul, he's trouble with a capital T. Romantically involved with Barbara, but also tight with Louise. So you've got this blurring of lines between staff and family, not a recipe for clear answers.
Nope, not at all. And then there are the Van Laars themselves. Alice, Bear's mother, is still deeply affected by his disappearance.
Can you imagine losing a child and then years later having this whole thing dredged up again with the new disappearance? Just heartbreaking.
It really is. And then we have T.J. Hewitt, the camp director. Grew up at Camp Emerson, practically raised there by her father, who was the groundskeeper.
Talk about history. So she's got loyalty to the Van Laars coming out her ears.
You could say that. But she's also got a conscience, which puts her in a difficult position. And trust me, that internal struggle of hers plays a huge role in how this all goes down.
Okay, so we've got our Van Laars all tangled up in their grief and secrets. But then there's this whole other element. And I'm not going to lie, this part is straight up creepy. We need to talk about Jacob Sluiter.
Ah, yes. Jacob Sluiter. He's like a figure straight out of a campfire story. Except this one's real.
For real. Back in the 60s, he was like the bogeyman of the Adirondacks. And get this, decades later, he pops up again, claiming he's got dirt on what happened to Bear Van Laar.
It's almost too perfect, isn't it? Like something out of a movie. Just as the Van Laars are dealing with a new disappearance, boom, a ghost from their past shows up. It's like he's threatening to blow their whole carefully crafted world apart.
And you know what? He just might. So picture it. August 1975. Camp Emerson's buzzing right, but not the good kind of buzzing. Everyone's on edge, the police are poking around, and all eyes are on Balsam Cabin, Barbara's cabin.
And almost immediately, Louise, the young counselor, she becomes the focus of suspicion. It's like they couldn't wrap their heads around the idea that the Van Laars might be involved, so they fixate on the outsider.
Classic tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And remember, at this point, they don't know the half of what went down with Bear. But yeah, they're digging into Louise's life, like dissecting her every move.
And here's where those conflicting narratives get really interesting. You've got the official police reports painting Louise as some kind of accomplice, using her thing with John Paul as a motive.
Yeah, because young love equals criminal mastermind, obviously. But then we get Louise's side of the story. And it's different. She talks about that night, the night she was seen leaving camp with a young girl, and says she was just trying to help someone.
It's like that saying, right? There are two sides to every story. And Louise's account, whether it's the whole truth or not, it adds a layer of complexity that the official reports just completely miss.
Exactly. There's always more than meets the eye. Meanwhile, the search for Barbara continues. And that's when they stumble upon this secret spot of Barbara's.
What's fascinating about that spot to me, it's not just the physical space, but what it represents, you know?
Yeah.
Like this yearning for independence, for an identity separate from the Van Laars, from Camp Emerson, from everything.
Like she built her own little world out there, away from all the eyes, all the expectations. And get this, it wasn't just some kid's hideout. She had her stuff there, drawings, paintings, journals. Remember we talked about her being labeled as this troubled teen? Well, turns out she was quite the little artist.
It's like she was communicating through her art, right? Giving us these glimpses into her thoughts, her fears, even her relationship with John Paul, which, by the way, was way more complicated than anyone realized at first.
Oh, yeah, way more complicated. Okay, so while all this is going down, the investigation takes a turn. Remember that blood-stained paper bag they found in John Paul's car?
I'm guessing it didn't belong to him.
Nope. Turns out it was Barbara's.
And boom, just like that, the focus shifts. John Paul, already linked to the Van Laars and Barbara, becomes the prime suspect.
Like they needed someone to pin this on, and he was the easiest target. But hold up, because remember, TJ, our loyal camp director with a heart of gold, well, not so much gold. She drops a truth bomb that changes everything.
And this is where the Van Laar family's carefully constructed facade starts to crumble. It's like we're finally seeing what's been hidden beneath the surface all these years.
Buckle up. TJ comes clean about Bear Van Laar's disappearance. No kidnapper, no boogeyman in the woods. It was an accident, a tragic accident, covered up by the Van Laars to protect their precious reputation.
Classic case of power and image trumping everything else, even the truth about their own family.
And get this, to make matters worse, TJ reveals that her own father, Vic, was in on the cover-up. Talk about family loyalty taken to a whole other level.
It's messed up, right? The Van Laars, they pulled the Hewitts into their web of lies and deceit. Talk about a toxic relationship.
But here's the real kicker. Ready for this? PJ doesn't just admit to knowing the truth about Bear. She confesses to helping Barbara disappear. She basically becomes Barbara's protector.
Wow, that's a bold move. It's like she's saying enough is enough. She's breaking the cycle of silence that's haunted her family for years.
And where does she send Barbara? To an island. A secluded island, hidden away from the drama of Camp Emerson and the suffocating legacy of the Van Laar name.
That island, it's like a symbol, don't you think? A chance for Barbara to start over, to figure out who she is without the weight of her family secrets.
It's like a clean slate. But, and there's always a but, freedom often comes with a price. Speaking of price, let's circle back to John Paul. Remember, he's public enemy number one. They catch up with him, and surprise, surprise, find more of Barbara's things in his car. Case closed, right?
Well, it seems that way, doesn't it? But there's something off about it. It's too easy.
Exactly. And Judy, our favorite investigator, she smells a rat. She's not convinced that John Paul is the mastermind.
Which says a lot about her, you know. That despite the pressure to close the case, she's not willing to settle for the easy answer. She wants the truth.
And thank goodness for that. Because guess what? John Paul, despite his many flaws, didn't kidnap Barbara. TJ framed him.
Wait, what? Seriously? She framed him?
Yep. Orchestrated the whole thing, planted the evidence to protect Barbara and throw the police off track.
This quiet, unassuming camp director, she was playing everyone.
She was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. So now we've got the truth about Bear's death. John Paul's taking the fall for a crime he didn't commit, and Barbara's living her best life on a secret island. Seems pretty wrapped up, right?
I don't know about that. I mean, sure, the individual mysteries are solved, but what about the bigger picture? Why did TJ go to such lengths? Why did the Van Laars hold on to their secrets so tightly? To understand that, we need to go deeper. We need to understand the history between these two families.
Because sometimes the most interesting stories aren't about what happened, but why it happened. And in this case, those whys run deep.
It all comes back to power, doesn't it? That dynamic between the Van Laars and the Hewitts, it's like this unspoken hierarchy. And we've seen throughout history those kinds of relationships rarely end well.
Especially when one family is basically calling all the shots,
Yeah.
right? You know there's going to be resentment.
Exactly. Think about it. After Dan Hewitt dies, it's the Van Laars who take in his sons, including TJ's dad, Vic. Sounds great on the surface, right? A real act of kindness. But it comes with strings attached. Unspoken expectations, you know, like a debt that can never really be repaid.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. So it's not just charity, it's about control. classic power move.
Right. And the Hewitts, they're in a tough spot, grateful for the help, but also stuck, totally at the mercy of the Van Laars. And that, I think, is what lays the groundwork for the whole Bear Van Laar tragedy.
Because it's not just about Bear in that walk with his grandfather, is it? There's this whole other layer of family drama going on. What was it you said earlier about a pressure cooker?
Oh, yeah. Peter Van Laar II, Bear's grandfather, and his son, Peter III, Bear's father, they had this, well, tense relationship, to say the least. Add in some long-held grudges, maybe fueled by a little too much liquid courage.
Recipe for disaster.
Exactly. We might never know what truly went down on that walk, but we do know the outcome. Bear ends up dead. And the cover-up, it wasn't about protecting Bear's memory or anything like that. It was about the Van Laar name, about maintaining their perfect image no matter the cost.
And Vic, TJ's dad, he gets dragged right into the middle of it, forced to betray his own sense of right and wrong to protect the very family that, let's be honest, has a hold over him.
And you can see the toll it takes on him. He's a changed man after that, haunted by guilt. And TJ, she sees all of this happening, sees what the Van Laars are willing to do, what they're willing to sacrifice, and how it destroys her own father.
So it's like she learns their game, but not in a way that she's proud of. More like she has no choice but to become aware of their tactics.
Right, and with that awareness comes a determination to protect Barbara, to break the cycle.
So when she helps Barbara disappear, it's not just about saving one girl. It's about rejecting everything the Van Laars represent.
It's a rebellion almost, a rejection of that toxic loyalty they demand.
And remember Judy, our investigator, who was never quite satisfied with the easy answer. Well, she ends up going to that island, the one TJ sent Barbara to. Can you imagine rowing across that lake, leaving everything behind, just to find one girl?
It's almost symbolic, isn't it? Like she's crossing over into a different world, a world where the Van Laars' influence doesn't reach.
In that final scene, with Barbara standing on the shore, chills. It's like in that moment, she's finally free. But it's not a happy ending, is it?
No, not exactly. It's bittersweet. Because even though the truth came out, even though John Paul was cleared, Camp Emerson still carries all that baggage, all those secrets, all that pain.
So what's the takeaway here? What do we do with all of this?
I think it's a reminder that these stories, these places, they hold more than just memories. They hold the weight of choices, the echoes of lives changed forever. And sometimes the most unsettling truths, the ones we bury the deepest, they're the ones that haunt us the most.
Well said. Well, folks, there you have it. Another deep dive, another glimpse into the dark side of, well, everything. Until next time, remember to question everything, keep digging for those hidden truths, and as always, happy deep diving.